Welcome to Voice with Vielka, the podcast dedicated to the ongoing quest for finding how to best teach kids to sing with confidence. I'm your host, Vielka, and I'll share my experiences as a performer, educator, founder, and mother for the last 20 years here in the heart of New York City. Thank you for joining me as I share with you the amazing people, practices, and talking points to help us grow together as singers, educators, entrepreneurs, and human beings. Hi everyone, I am so excited to be here with you today, sharing someone who I met at the South by Southwest Education Conference when she was on a panel discussion about early childhood and the environment and that sort of interaction between the two. And I'm really excited for so many reasons. So let me tell you a little bit about Natalie Williams. She is an extraordinary educator and advocate. And she has a bachelor's in child development from Florida State University, a master's degree in business leadership from Nova Southeastern University, and a master's degree in special education from the University of Miami. That's a lot of education and a lot to talk about just there. I'm very excited. Not only that, Natalie has dedicated over 16 years to shaping young minds as a director of preschools across Florida and Manhattan. A passionate community builder and member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, she champions the needs of Brown and Black children and those with special needs. Her impressive roles include serving on the Early Learning Coalition of Broward, the FLA-EYC Board, and the City of Miramar's Education Advisory Board. That's a lot of boards. That's amazing. And a lot of great work. She's also an NAEYC Affiliate Advisory Council member, an international presenter, and a recent appointee to the City of Miami's Blue Ribbon Commission on Education. Her work with the National Black Child Development Institute and her enthusiasm for museum education showcase her commitment to creating impactful learning experiences for families worldwide. Get ready to be inspired as we dive into the world of early childhood education and museum education with the remarkable Natalie Williams. Natalie, welcome.
That was so amazing. Like, oh my goodness. Like, you are the best. If I just get that, a clip of that, that's just amazing. You make me sound bigger than I really feel. But I definitely am so excited to be here with you and to talk about education.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm like bursting with excitement and questions for you. I think part of it is that I love speaking with other educators, that alone. I'm obviously in Manhattan, and so I love that we kind of share that we've had some Manhattan experience. And really, I have such a fondness for early childhood. I kind of think that everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. And for teaching, I learned it as being a kindergarten music teacher for music.
I love that.
So much to explore. But first, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you even find this path? And we'll get into what museum education is, but just, how did you get here? What's your story?
Well, I really wanted to be a pediatrician. But after microbiology too, I decided, okay, yeah, maybe not. And I knew I wanted to work with children, and I knew I wanted to make a difference in the lives of all children. And so I started with child development, which now is called human and science and social services. But I was part of a small group of people who knew that we wanted to be educators, but um, with the early childhood focus, which is very different than what most people go to college for in education. They typically want to be teachers in primary school, which is, K through fifth grade. And so I started there. And I loved working with children. I also loved directing schools because I realized that the leadership in a preschool really determines the success of school readiness. And I started at Florida State University. I co-ran the Department of Children and Families. The Department of Education's preschool. And then I became a field director because I knew I wanted to understand what education looked like, not only in my city, but throughout the state and throughout really the nation. And then I joined Bright Horizons Family Solutions, which has been one of Forbes' top 100 companies to work for. And that's where I really understood the importance of the business aspect in education as an advocate and lobbying for policy and really understanding how to support teachers on a greater level. And that's when I realized that serving on boards really helps to make sure that dollars are going to the right programs to serve children and families well. After that, I wanted to expand my reach. And so I took on special projects that would put me in spaces and places to understand early childhood education from every lens, from every cultural background. And so I did. I worked on Wall Street at 20 Pine, which is a beautiful school. But I've also worked in the most impoverished community in Orlando working on a project called West Lakes. So I've seen the span and the spectrum of quality care and children who are not getting what they need to really be set up for life. And so I now am here at the museum, and museum education is so uniquely different. The arts, when you think about really focusing on the arts as a vehicle for learning through play, I think that's where the intersection of music and museum education thrive. And so I'm excited to be here and to be on this full journey of early childhood education and advocacy.
That is so inspiring and amazing. And I feel like we could take any one of those threads and just spend days talking about it. But let's start with digging into museum education a little bit more. I want to say I was on a project maybe around 2011. And that was the first time where, and maybe it was just me, but it was the first time where I went to the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and got to experience being with a museum educator and seeing, I think we visited like 3 different pieces of art, and there was sort of a systemized way, protocol of asking questions to guide us through the experience. And this was in the context of the Department of Education in New York City collaborating with different arts institutions to help, ultimately to help our kids, right? But it was
Yes.
the first time I was like, wait, museum education is a thing. So for those of our listeners who maybe just think of museums the way I did when I was a kid, I don't even know if I went to museum as a kid, to be honest, but like, I think my first thought, if we're just kind of starting blank slate, was like museum, that's going to be kind of old and stuffy. It's got a bunch of old things.
This is true.
Right.
We
And
have
I mean,
really
that's
old collections.
and I think what's amazing is that now there's this sort of specialty, and you are really in the heart of what I think a lot of our listeners can find useful in terms of bringing together, like you're saying, art and children, and this idea of exploration and play, which might not be obvious, um, especially if you're a serious artist. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
yes,
So
it
help us
does.
kind of dig in a little bit of what are some of the areas that, what do you think about in your role there? What does museum education look like for you?
For us, museum education looks like a learning space where children learn through play, are able to have or given an opportunity to connect with their community. Not here, but at many museums that also includes collections, which is the old stuffy stuff that you discussed. I believe it's the perfect balance of informal and formal learning. And it truly is a child's first learning space, our children's museums. And throughout the entire span of your life, you will continue to return to a museum for learning at all ages. I think it's exactly what you said. Many people visit a museum and they don't even think of the fact, they don't even think about the fact that they're learning, which is what makes it so unique and special. But most museums are designed with the idea of creating a space for children and families to learn and play together, to discover, to create. And our exhibits, our traveling exhibits, our permanent exhibits, our public programming, our family engagement, special projects, even down to our playgrounds. We just opened a Harmony Park, so we just opened a park for music, but everything is thought of based on children and families being able to gain a learning experience from every single corner. And I think that's what education used to be about, right? Where we understood that enrichments, art, culture, community are the basis behind how children and families learn authentically, which is why we really, in our formal educational programs, we don't use dittos, we don't use worksheets, and it aligns with high quality care, which is why being a member of NACCE and sitting on the NACCE board and just thinking about developmentally appropriate practices is important. So when you get to pair that art piece with, wow, this is just good for learning. So whether I'm homeschooling my child or whether it's the weekend and I want to do something fun, but wow, if they can still learn, then I'm going to take them to a museum. And I think every time I visit a city, I don't know about you, I always scope out where the children museums and the history and science museums are, because I know I'm going to take away a piece of that city's culture and history just from one visit.
That's incredible. I'm going to have to ask you more questions about Harmony Park, of course. Being a music person, I'm super interested in that. But I wanted to just note that when I was checking you out on LinkedIn, you had in there a quote. I'm trying to find it, but basically it was that you wanted to be the change in what you thought needed to happen in education. And I share that vision. That's why I started my company. But I'm curious what that means for you. You know, what do you see? Where can we do better?
Gosh, that's such a loaded question, right? There's so many areas we can do better. I think just getting back to that genuine love and passion for education, that anti-bias approach to early childhood education. I think the quote you're referring to also had a picture of two children who couldn't be more opposite in how they looked and where they come from, yet sharing one learning experience together. And our place as early childhood educators is age appropriate experiences, really developing those soft skills in children that are truly lacking. I think is what's most critical right now. Collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, just really focusing on developing good citizens of the world, just good people. And so we're really thinking about school readiness. And is that really knowing your ABCs and counting to 100? Or is that understanding how to work critically and collaboratively? Is that having a kind heart and having the self-regulation skills to make good decisions and deal with the ups and downs of life as you grow and mature? I mean, I think that's what's lacking. And children's museums, I think, are returning to that. What's important in developing a child as opposed to just teaching to a test.
Yeah, so I hear you saying so much less about the facts and really more about your feelings, your questions, working with others, all of the skills that really will be the case no matter the context, right?
Yes, I love that. The
Yeah.
case, no matter the context. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about a situation like the Harmony Park. Kind of give us a concrete example of what was the big idea, how to, and then how do you translate that into the actual practice?
Yeah, here at Miami Children's Museum, we are really dedicated to our community and creating spaces for the public. That's a commitment that we've had for 40 years plus, as a result, when we think about our spaces, especially our outdoor spaces that are open to the public 24/7, we want to make sure that, again, we're creating spaces where children and families can explore, innovate, create. And so Harmony Park Music, which is really your field, music just really covers all grounds of connection, intergenerational connectivity, learning, calming, mindfulness. I mean, music really spans that entire spectrum. And so our Harmony Park has musical instruments. It has a waterfall, so that water feature. It has beautiful colors and sea creatures and the different sounds and vibrations that can be created from some of the musical instruments outside just speaks to creating harmony in our community. And that space is free and open to the public 24/7. And so what I love about when we think about children's museums, we don't only serve the people who pay for a ticket and come into our museum. We have so many outreach programs, so many community opportunities for children and families to explore and to learn for free. And that's, I think, what makes us truly special.
When I was researching the Miami Children's Museum there, I couldn't believe how many programs there are.
Yes.
I was not expecting it. And then as I'm going through, it's like, oh, wait, there's more. Oh, wait, there's more. There's more.
Yes.
Yeah. So am I understanding correctly? There's a preschool. There's an
Yes.
actual preschool, and there are so much. Give us a
There's
little
so
overview.
much. Okay,
And are
so
you overseeing all of this in your role?
not the entire
Because it's
museum,
so
but
much.
I know what I do get to oversee, which is really just a small part of what we do, is our on-site preschool, which features 6 classrooms, and we serve anywhere between 80 to 100 children. I also get to serve as the liaison to our on-site charter school, and it's really important to note that we are the only children's museum with an in-house charter school in the nation. So we get the unique opportunity to provide museum education through our charter school. So we're still a part of Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So children are still having that academic piece of preparing for kindergarten. But the fact that we've been in a school forever just shows that you can prepare children academically for kindergarten and for school and life, while still giving them this great enrichment in artistic and cultural availability to programming and to curriculum. So we have our charter school, which serves about 315 children every single year from kindergarten to 5th grade, which also features a gifted program for 1st and 2nd grade and up. We also are accredited by NACE, and our preschool is accredited by NACE, and our charter school is accredited by Cognia. We're also a STEM accredited school. Something that's really cool that's coming up is we're working with NAEYC to put our entire museum through accreditation. So we may be the first children's museum that in our entire museum, not just our classrooms, are serving children with the highest quality of learning and instruction. So that's super exciting. We also have an on-site after-school program that serves about 120 children. We also serve 400 children in the community in low to moderate communities. So they're Title I schools, and we provide after-school programming there. And our communities range from all the way down south in Homestead to as far north as Miami Gardens. And then we have a STEAM integration project where we provide STEAM professional development and classroom observation and guidance and learning in Spanish, so that a lot of teachers can gain high quality professional development in their native language. And that's super special. We've been doing that for so many years. And that's just the things. Oh, I'm also in partnership with the University of Miami on our research project, where we're really defining museum education and talking about the great benefits of a child attending a museum school versus a community school. And then we have all of our outreach program. We're actually, I believe, still one of the only children's museums with an on-site theater troupe that actually develops and puts on shows both in-house and in the community. We provide so many art enrichments to hotels, to community centers. We partner with Art Basel. I mean, we have and then we have special programming for children with special rights. We serve all children through again, community programs. We have sensory Saturdays. We have so many programmings. We make sure that we're always recognizing rainbow families. And as a member of the queer community, it's so important to me that we truly uphold our mission and vision by accepting all children and all families and providing a space in the community for everyone.
I mean, this sounds like a dream to
It
me.
really
It
is.
really
It's like
does. It
close
sounds
to
so
Disney. It's one of the happiest places to be.
yeah, it really sounds so forward thinking, so groundbreaking. Yeah, I so much is here. For those of us who may not understand or want a clearer picture, how would you describe just maybe a few things? Like what's the difference between sort of a typical school versus showing up to school at the museum?
Yeah, so I've worked in a lot of amazing community-based schools, and I mean, every school has its unique features. But when you think about a children's museum, you're thinking about 17 exhibits or galleries, an on-site art studio, STEM lab, museum educators, resident artists. Your child is exposed to art, culture, community, history on such a level that a community school just can't provide them with. This is their second home. Our children flow through our galleries, and it truly is an extension of the classroom. And so artifacts, colors, shapes, we have a kinetic sand room, we have, I mean, an on-site bank, Publix, we just have a supermarket, we have an entire huge construction zone where children can create blueprints and then build out projects. I mean, the level of and of course we're situated on Watson Island, so most children's museums are in really cool spaces in your community. So the children get to sit outside and watch cruises come and go and talk about transportation in real time. And then we get all the benefits of a typical community school. We still have that parent advisory group. We still have muffins with mom, and we still have all of those regular things that preschools do that families love, but it truly is an extension like no other. We just graduated 46 children from our fifth grade class. And you got to think about it. Our CEO said it during graduation. Those 46 children are the only 46 children in the nation that graduated from a children's museum school. That alone really sparks a level of interest and exposure that you just wouldn't get going to a community school.
So as I'm sort of imagining what you're telling me, I'm picturing one of the big differences as like you're still as a child learning all of the things that you need to learn, right? That are sort of set by the state, the nation, the powers that be
Yes.
of what you have to learn, but that the environment is so different, that you're really in this experiential environment
Yes.
and that I imagine, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what kind of training it takes for the educators to be able to achieve all the objectives that are sort of traditional, and then also this kind of making sure the soft skills are really being emphasized in addition to whatever else comes out of working, in real time with resident artists and just experiencing such a different environment.
Yes. And because we are an innovative space and we use Reggio Emilia as an inspiration to our emergent curriculum, it looks different every single day. I mean, one day it's messy play day and the children are painting outside and they are making slime and they are running through they're running through paint out, it's just so explosive. And I think to answer your question specifically, it takes a very unique teacher to work at a museum because, like you said, we still have the developmentally appropriate practices. We are still governed because we are committed to hosting voluntary pre-kindergarten classrooms, which is our universal pre-K program here in Florida. So we have VPK classrooms. So there is still assessments that all of the children in the entire state are required to take that our children take as well. We just take a different approach to introducing those skills. And back to what you said, the teacher just needs to fall in love with the environment. They spend a significant amount of time in the galleries, in the exhibits, going through the program. It takes about a year for you to really wrap your brain around not having a set curriculum, every day looking different, yet still realizing after the end of the day that, wow, I didn't take the traditional route, yet our children assessment scores are through the roof. And so we graduated children from our pre-K program, and probably 80% of them are reading on first, second grade levels, and we don't have a reading program. It's just going into the galleries and looking at print and talking about language and really discovering vocabulary together as we go through programming and watching shows and prototyping exhibits. It's the robustness that just naturally contributes to academic success.
This is so inspiring to me, especially given the very wide range that I'm sure you have seen, and I know that I have seen in New York City in terms of
Mm.
what a classroom can look like and how different people's experiences can be. My own kids had we're very lucky that they got to go to a preschool that was Reggio Emilia. And so for those who are listening who don't really know what that is, maybe can you give us a few hallmarks of what that means?
Sure. For us here, it's where the environment is the third teacher. And when you have such a creative space, once you tap into understanding that, it just opens so many doors for learning. For us, it's also that the community plays a major role in the learning process. So we have planning meetings regularly. Our parents are part of the classroom. They serve as teachers too. They come in, teach lessons. We have grandparents as educator day, and they come in and teach lessons based on their life experiences, sharing their recipes. It's also really focused on the child's interest. That we really allow the child to lead the learning, and we really work as co-researchers in that learning space. And when we value children in that way and make them part of the process, it is truly amazing what the scaffolding that happens in the learning environment. So I think for us, that's the base. It's just really using the environment as a third teacher, taking the children's lead in their interest, working as co-researchers, and including the community in every part of the learning process. It's truly the inspiration that we take from Reggio when we build out and experiences for museum education.
I love this so much. And it makes me think about one of my mentors was Eric Booth, and he sort of coined the term teaching artist. And
Mhm.
uh, the whole premise of how he approaches learning, really, he broke down the word educate into to draw out. And that's what I hear you saying. And that's what I know I've seen my kids experience. And as even a voice teacher, a music teacher, so much is about, first off, realizing that it is a collaboration in the room
Yes.
rather than, okay, I'm going to sort of give you a quick download of everything I know and then just suck that up and move on. That instead, that it's like, we're actually all creators. We're creating something.
I love
Right,
that.
but this is an exchange. And
Yes.
what I hear you saying is that collaboration is really built on the curiosity and what questions do
Yes.
the kids have? And then as a guide, how can I facilitate, refine, dig deeper thinking about the questions that will lead them to what it is we do know that we want them to learn, and also to places that we would never have gotten to without their input, right? As the kids.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
So I know you currently live in Manhattan, right?
yeah.
Okay. How many museums would you say you visited? I mean, you have the exposure to some of my favorite museums. I mean, I love, love, love museums in New York City, but how many would you say you've actually visited?
Like ever or in a
Like
year?
ever?
Oh, like ever? Well, several. Yeah. I mean, the Natural History Museum, the dinosaurs, and I'm a mom too, right? So of course, for me, that what I think exactly what you're saying is so on point. And I wouldn't have known this when I first started teaching, and was not a parent myself. But now that I've had that experience, exactly what you said about the ages 0 to 5, those preschool and even pre-preschool years, I was very cognizant. I mean, I very deliberately wanted my children to be raised here in Manhattan, even in Greenwich Village, to be honest, because of the level of diversity and exposure. I know you get it, but
And thank you for
museums,
that.
right? But museums were one of those really key ways for them, especially when it's really cold and you
Yes.
need something to do and you're
Or
a
rainy.
stroller and the kids, rainy days. Right, rainy's the hardest ones. But no, the Natural History Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the MoMA,
Yes.
the
Yes.
new museum downtown, trying to think of course, the Children's Museum.
Oh my gosh,
No,
yes.
there are so many. The cloisters and the museum up there. Yeah, and really for me, it's coming up more now. I think now that my children are getting older, that my time is freeing up a little bit more in some ways, and I'm starting to go more socially, to be honest.
Yes,
Um,
I love
and
that.
just learning. We just went to an amazing exhibit at the Met about the Harlem Renaissance.
Oh,
We had a guide take us, and it was just fantastic. I'm so spoiled in that way, in that being here in New York City, we have so much. But to your point, I think it's really easy to just be doing what you have to do and maybe not be aware of how much is out there. Um, I'm an artist too, so I'm biased, right? So I love
yes.
art. I love art. And I love how it really kind of back to Eric again. He makes this distinction between entertainment and art. And I won't be able to quote him perfectly, but one of the things he said that kind of stuck with me is that education confirms, or not education, rather, entertainment confirms what you already know, right? Like it feels good. Uh,
Yes.
Art broadens your horizon.
Yes.
I'm
That's so
hard. Isn't that
well
amazing? Right?
said.
I'm like so
It
hard
so
pressed to
is.
find a better definition than that of like,
I agree.
yeah. So,
So
um,
go out to a museum. Always, I mean, take your children to museum and don't stop going to museums, which is what I love that you just shared. As an adult, that's really where I love experiencing life through the eyes of museum exhibits, teaching artists, museum educators, creatives, which is why I think creatives on social media are so successful because just taking us on an experience is such a value to life that and to education. So the experiences that museums provide for children and families is unmatched.
yeah. And I think what was sort of hidden from me, and even just having this dialogue with you now, it's making me more aware, is how it really is a conversation. Somehow at some point, I don't know why, I got in my head that like going to the museum is like, okay, we're gonna like look at all the almost information overload, and
Yes.
and feeling like I couldn't relate, like that it was something
Yes.
other. And now I really see how, especially when you have contemporary artists, but really of any place in history how we're all having this human experience and that there is a connection that can be made. And to me, taking it back to the education and being in the school there, that's part of what these kids are just growing up in, is that how to have these conversations, how to have these
Yes,
questions. Maybe
it
speak
is
a little bit
why.
about, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. It is why we really advocate for museum membership because of what you just shared. You, when you visit a museum once, you don't fully experience all that it has in terms of the experiences and the learning in one visit. And so having memberships for your local museums is so important because every time that you return with your child or you return yourself, you're able to scaffold the learning, you're able to look deeper, you're able to read a little bit more, to experience more programming. And that's really where the beauty lies when you return. So that's why museum schools are growing at such an alarming rate because we understand the value in people and children returning to museums for the continued learning experience.
That is such a huge and tremendous idea. I spend a lot of my time training teachers, and the idea of scaffolding, of these teeny tiny baby steps, of revisiting the
Yes.
same thing a million times in a million ways, and what the challenge is of, who you have in front of you and how they're going to grasp that idea. Maybe talk to us a little bit about scaffolding. And also, when I was digging through, I don't know if I have the name of it down, but with your one master's degree, it was really about training leaders, and that there are different ways there are different categories of how you
Yes.
create. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I don't think I had ever quite seen that before, broken down.
Well, I think it speaks to we have a program here that we created, which is called the Teacher Guided Field Trip. And it's an approach that we took right after the pandemic. I attended a conference right after the or during, yeah, towards the tail end of the pandemic. And I won't name the conference, but it was my first time sitting in a session, several sessions, that young teachers got up and left. I mean, this generation is very different. When I attend a session, even if it's not good, I stay in it out of respect of the trainer, but this generation, they're very bold. They feel very strongly that if you're not capturing my attention, if I don't feel like I'm really getting gems or tools to be successful in my classroom, I'm gonna get up and I'm going to leave your session. And when I attended this conference, the younger generation of teachers cared more about the networking piece of attending a conference, meeting other teachers, other creatives, exchanging contact information, exchanging best practices right there at the coffee shop. I realized, okay, if we don't change how we're approaching professional development, we are going to lose the next generation of teachers. That's what situational leadership is all about, which is realizing, taking a continuous pulse of where we are, what we need, what the next generation of educators and professionals need, and then scaffolding even that, how we approach professional development. And I quickly realized teachers are looking to podcasts for their professional development. They're not wanting to sit in a training with a PowerPoint presentation and a printout of guided slides. And so we created the teacher guided field trip because we said, okay, we're gonna step away from the screen and we're gonna step back into the learning spaces. So our teacher guided field trip is where teachers can come for professional development, but we don't sit in the boardroom and watch 25 slides. We go into the galleries, we play, we reflect on our play. I mean, and really play. So we have a big piano. You actually create music in the big piano. We have a karaoke room for children. We go in, we actually drop one or two of our favorite karaoke songs. And then we sit and we reflect on the play that we just engaged in. And then from there, we're able to build out learning webs, build out ideas, have that connectivity. So I think when I think of professional development and leadership, I think as long as we realize that the times are changing, that young professionals are different. They want it now, they want it quick. And what could have been an email should not be a meeting. I feel like my my Gen Yers or Zers say these days. And realizing that as a person who sat in many trainings and really learned from those trainings, instead of being offended by the fact that they don't want to sit in my session or your session, understanding, okay, how can we evolve, which is what scaffolding is. How can I return to the same space, but approach it differently than I ever have before, and innovatively continue to lead?
I mean, I'm so thrilled by this conversation. And I'm actually really thrilled by this new generation that will get up and leave. You know why? Because I think it forces us to evolve. And for too long, education seems to me to have just been,
Yeah, say it,
yeah,
girl, say
yeah.
it. Flatline,
I'm sure
right?
for those who are listening, I'm showing a straight line. Like
Yeah.
it's, yeah, a predictable pattern that, especially now with YouTube, I feel like
Yes.
there's a lot of fear around the new technology. And I see that and I understand. And at the same time, I personally find it so liberating. As a kid who I think kids love to learn. I think we all love to learn. I think it's part of just the human experience. And to have at your fingertips the ability to pretty much learn anything you want to learn, but the how is
The
so,
how.
right? And I hear you saying the play, the value of play. And I think it's easy from the outside to just look into a classroom quickly and think, oh, they're just sort of goofing off in there, that
Yes.
don't know that they're really doing anything. Uh,
Yes.
so maybe talk just a little bit about,
I'm so glad you brought us back to that, because
yeah,
the piece I didn't say about Reggio Emilia is documentation. And it's the piece that I think brings us back to this point here, which is we have a duty as educators to document the learning process and to share that documentation, not only with parents, but with children, which is why evidence of learning on a child's level is so critical, because they deserve to be part of that documentation as well. And reading and seeing what I created and seeing it live on a shelf, creatively in a gallery. So we have canvases that children have created that become part of our museum decor. So they walk by their art pieces and they're on the wall with some famous artists. And so it's that documentation piece. Parents need to understand, how is my child learning through play? And that way, when I do look in the classroom and I just see what some may predict as chaos, I understand, because my teacher or my director or my teaching artist or my music instructor has explained to me why this process looks like this and how it's going to help me become a better citizen or teacher or student, and that my child is receiving a holistic approach. And it's through the documentation. It is why podcasts, it is why documentation books, portfolios, um, writing articles on the learning process or new approaches or pedagogy, all of that research and data, that's why all of that is important. Because without the documentation, people don't understand it. And if they don't understand it, they're not going to fund it. And if they're not going to fund it, how are we going to really be successful?
it makes me think of a few things. One, like I said, my kids did go to a Reggio school. And so if I look back, first off, I have on the shelf over there a huge binder of all of this work that they did when they
I
were
love that.
all these pictures. So for me, in my experience, it looks like a lot of pictures of my children doing things. It looks like their creative work, so a lot of drawings. But what's really different about it is that the story is attached. Their story is
Yes.
attached. So there's, picture an 8.5 by 11 regular piece of paper and what looks like scribbles, right? Because they were 2 or 3 and it looks like scribbles, right? But then so carefully documented with quotations what my child had to say about that. And it really gives us a lens, a window into their thinking, what questions they're asking, their curiosity. And it is the stepping stones into just opening more doors and discovery, and how that feels so different than a world being imposed upon you rather than you opening doors to the world, right?
Oh, so good.
I mean, it's an incredible philosophical change for
Yes.
educators that
Yes, it
can
is.
look really daunting, I imagine, if you're not used to it. And I'm sure I probably I have to really think back now because I've been in this work for a long time. And as I start to work with new teachers, one of the questions I'm constantly asking myself, how can I make this process more clear, faster, more efficient? I want them to get there. And at the same time, there is no rushing either, right? Like that it does take time, that it's not. So what are some things maybe that you found when you're working with a beginner teacher?
Um, beginner teachers really struggle not being told what to do. Most beginner teachers are used to a set curriculum, and they're waiting on a set of guidelines or set lesson plans to just kind of be told what to do and then to find a creative way of doing what you want me to do. So they struggle with us saying, we're not going to tell you what to do. We want you to listen to children. We want you to, of course, use some key developmental indicators, to use some standards for learning, of course, to set up your environment and to create as co-researchers a learning space, but listen to their interest. And then you take their interest, and that's when you kind of fill it with learning. I will say, based on what you just said, it really leans into what we call art talk. And as museum educators, we use art as an observational tool of what a child is learning, where they are, what they're being exposed to. We use art therapy for that same thing as well. So those art pieces and that dictation, they're a really important part of understanding what's going on in a child's world. And so they are valuable pieces that you have in that folder that tells, like you said, a story. I think beginner teachers, you, if you're teaching for a reason, and you come with your own unique set of skills and ideas and experiences that you want your child to have, lean in on that. I think with that and the developmentally appropriate practices or some key standards for your state or for your organization, depending on where you are, and when you lean in on that and then the community at large, you will create some beautiful experiences for children. And trust me, they will be ready for school. I think once we give teachers the safety in knowing you can show up as your true, authentic self and use the environment as the third teacher and just go discover yourself, innovate yourself, play for yourself, learn while you're teaching the children. That's why that co-researching piece of Reggio is so important to the work that we do. I think when you quote unquote unleash the teacher is when they really, you get to see them in their true authenticity, and the learning just is beautiful.
There is so much here to explore. I want to take a minute and maybe just translate a few of the thoughts and big ideas that we've been talking about to my specific audience of voice teachers who are out there and might be taking this in and thinking it's interesting, but really not sure what the translation is. um, so just a couple things that come to my mind is one, this idea that rather than sort of a traditional voice lesson where if you, Natalie, wanted to show up and start singing, that I, as your teacher, already have a clear idea of what exercises I want you to do and what songs I want you to sing, and sort of my way of showing you. And you probably aren't going to have a lot of say. You're going to go through an experience I've created that is very traditional and doesn't have a lot of room for play, to be honest, let's say. Um, and I think one really simple thing is to just have the idea like, hey, what can you do? What are different sounds you can make with your voice? Like just that alone. And I'm not saying, by the way, that there aren't ways that are really helpful. I mean, I came up with the voice method because I think it's super helpful for efficiency and to get the end result, which for me is that I want to be able to give you vocal freedom, that you can create and do whatever you want with your voice,
Love
right?
that.
The tools for that. So I think there are concrete things, just like in Rego, there are guiding principles and ideas, that there's questioning, observation, documentation, that it's not just totally, okay, we're just all going to sit in a room, and there is some structure to it.
Yes.
And at the same time, it's being okay with what's not structured and inviting that in, because it actually
Yes.
gives you more to work with. So that rather than like, one key thing I'm constantly telling my teachers and just in my own practice, really practicing, is the idea of right and wrong. And that rather than a right and wrong way, there just is. There's just this thing in front of us. And maybe it's sound if we're singing, but there's this. And then what did we learn from that? What information did it give us? What other ways might we try? What else can we do? How can we adjust? How can we play with that? Which is really different than a traditional type of voice lesson. So I hope that gives my listeners a little bit of a translation of how some of these ideas can be used in either the private studio or if you're in a music classroom, any of that. I could talk to you forever, Natalie. I'm looking at the clock. I'm so gracious and grateful for your time, and want to just wrap up with a few rapid fire round questions that I ask everybody. Usually I have more voice people on. Well, I have a mix. So some of these questions may seem out of left field for you, and that's
That's
okay.
okay. We
I
like that.
believe, yeah, I believe that if you can talk, you can sing, and that singing is actually just part of our human expression, that it's everybody, right? So just as art is and creating is
Yes.
everybody. So for you, can you fill in the blank? Singing is what?
Magical.
Oh, I love that. We'll have to talk more about singing next time. Teaching is fill in the blank.
Vital.
I know as a public speaker, you've probably experienced this. You're nervous walking on stage. What's the first thing you do?
Breath.
Yeah.
Center my mind and my heart.
Mhm. When you are alone, what do you love to perform or listen to when no one's around, and why?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. I love Janet Jackson. She's amazing. And I can perform Rhythm Nation like no other. I danced for 12 years. So I love the pairing of music and movement. And so yeah, give me some Janet and I'm dancing around the room. Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. That's fantastic. What's an example of something ordinary you find extraordinary that you're grateful for?
Trees. I
Mhm.
think trees are taken for granted, and I just love a good blowing tree. I love a good shade. I think trees are so vital, so important, and so ordinary, yet so extraordinary.
Oh, I love that. Oh, so great. Okay, last one. We are celebrating you. The sky's the limit. How do you want to celebrate?
Oh, I would celebrate in the clouds, paint like let's just have a cloud party. Let's just go up to the clouds and have, I love painting. I love painting with children. So if we're celebrating, then we're painting the town red. Go Delta Sigma Theta sorority incorporated. So, ooh,
Oh,
yeah,
I love that. That's such a
yeah,
creative and fun answer and speaks a lot to, I think, who you are and the work that you do and how you really broaden my perspective and I'm sure many others. So I'm
Thank
so
you so much for the
grateful.
conversation. You are amazing. And thank you for shining a very important light on early childhood education, museum education, and really broadening your listeners' ears because I never thought about the intersection of early childhood education and music outside of what happens in the classroom. So I think this platform that you've provided to your listeners is super innovatively creative. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. And before you go, tell us a little bit about the new project that's going to be launching.
Oh, yes, before I go, we are launching, Miami Children's Museum is launching the first ever Museum Playful Learning Collective, which is a group of playful learners. Mostly we're geared towards museum education and art and culture who come together to share best practices. Our first meeting is actually going to be next Wednesday in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the Explora Science and Children's Museum. They are hosting the summer conference for Reggio Emilia, and so we are excited for to partner with our North America Reggio Emilia Alliance and serve on the panel on Friday. So it's just coming together. You don't have to be Reggio, you don't have to be a teacher, you just have to be interested in playful learning experiences. And so I invite you to visit our website, www.miamichildrensmuseum.com, and learn more.
Amazing. Playful learning, everyone. Doesn't just those two words, let it really ring. Playful learning.
Yeah,
Good
that's what we're all about.
Amazing. Natalie, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining me for this podcast. To learn more about my step-by-step approach to voice education, where I've consolidated 30 years of vocal study into 4 words even a 3-year-old can do, just go to www.vielka.com. That's Vielka.com. Happy singing.